If you find yourself to be a resident of the Capitol or of the City Hall, as governor or mayor or as president, get off your knees and get to work.
Hello and welcome to The Secular Advocate. I'm Laurie Gaylor, president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation Action Fund. And today we are going to be talking about why the FFRF Action Fund and Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin are getting out the vote for Judge Susan Crawford in the April 1st state Supreme Court race here in Wisconsin. We're also going to discuss what's at stake in the election and the election's national implications. And I am delighted to have in studio with us the strategic Michelle Velasquez, Chief Strategy Officer of Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin. And it's a pleasure to have you in studio with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So Michelle, tell us what is at stake.
There's a lot at stake in this election. As you already know, the Wisconsin State Supreme Court has a progressive majority right now, and the seat that is up is Justice Ann Walsh Bradley. And we have two candidates who are very, very different vying for that position. The Wisconsin Supreme Court's job is to interpret our laws, interpret our state constitution. And so whoever gets that seat will be a part of the group making decisions about reproductive freedoms, about education, workers' rights, and the list just goes on and on. So the stakes are incredibly high.
Well, and of course there's the case before the state Supreme Court on the 1849 so-called abortion ban. Can you talk a little bit about that ban and where this lawsuit is?
Sure. So there are two cases involving abortion right now in front of the state Supreme Court. The first is Call versus Ermansky, and that case was filed in the days following the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And that case has already been briefed and argued and really deals with what does that statute mean and can it be enforced nowadays in light of much newer statutes related to the regulation of abortion access. The second lawsuit is Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin versus Ermansky. And that case sort of zooms out a little bit and asks a bigger question. Does Wisconsin Statute 940-04, if it were to be interpreted as being enforced against abortion, does our state constitution allow that? In other words, does our state constitution protect the right to bodily autonomy, which of course means the right to decide whether and when to become a parent and the right to decide abortion? And that case has not yet been briefed or argued in front of the Supreme Court yet. However, it was accepted this term. So we do anticipate that, or would expect to still have that case be heard this term. But these won't be the only cases dealing with reproductive freedoms. These are sort of just the beginning. This is a brand new sort of legal landscape now that the federal protection has been overturned.
So Michelle, I'm sure like me, you suffered during this. It was more than a year and a half, wasn't it, when after the Dobbs decision, when the clinics all closed in Wisconsin. And a lot of people around the country didn't realize that abortion was not legal in Wisconsin during that period. And then we had, in that first case you mentioned, a Dane County judge say this statute did not apply to chosen abortion care. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that case?
Sure, happy to do that. So that's right. After Roe was overturned, we knew, of course, we had this law sitting on our books from 1849 that could arguably be enforced against abortion providers. And so while Planned Parenthood didn't believe that that law automatically sprung back to life, it recognized that there was a real threat and that prosecutors in this state, some very vocally and publicly, talked about their belief that that law did come back into force and that they would enforce that law against abortion providers. So for that reason, Planned Parenthood had to pause its abortion services for about 15 months until we got that Dane County Circuit Court decision. And what that Circuit Court decision said is this law actually doesn't apply to consensual medical abortions. This law is about feticide, which is something different. And so that was the ruling that the district attorney from Sheboygan sought bypass on and review in our state Supreme Court. So it was really dealing with a statutory interpretation. In light of all of these new laws related to abortion, is that law from the 19th century still enforceable? I certainly don't think it is, and the lower court has agreed, and so we are waiting to see what our state Supreme Court says about that.
And then fortunately, most of the clinics reopened again, including the Planned Parenthood clinics.
That's right. So all of the Planned Parenthood health centers across the state remained open post-Dobbs, but could not provide any abortion care. So they resumed abortion in care in Milwaukee and Dane County in September of 2023, and then Sheboygan in December of 2023. But even before Roe was overturned, abortion access has been very, very challenging in Wisconsin. There are a lot of restrictions that were passed during the Walker administration with the intent to make it very, very difficult for people to provide care and for patients to access the care they need. So Wisconsin has always been characterized as a sort of hostile state against abortion access.
A 24-hour waiting period, that kind of thing.
That's correct. There are requirements that people who receive abortions do so over the course of 2 mandatory in-person visits. And so while the statute says 24 hours, that doesn't always mean 24 hours. As most people can relate to their own, difficulty sometimes scheduling multiple appointments with healthcare providers. Our state statute requires when people are seeking abortion through medication that they see the same physician for both of those appointments. There is no health or safety or medical best practices that require that or that would suggest that does anything to advance people's health outcomes or the safety or efficacy of the medication. It's, again, just another barrier that was created to make it difficult to provide and difficult to receive that care, which is why out of the 72 counties in this state, there are only 3 counties where this care is accessible.
That's terrible. But we do not want to lose that care in those 3 counties, and that is at stake in this April 1st Supreme Court race, and that is why FFRF Action Fund, Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin have endorsed Susan Crawford. And as always, we do want to hear your thoughts on the topics we discussed today. You can leave your questions in the chat below, and we'll try our best to answer your questions live during the show. And we do have some footage from the debate that Susan Crawford did with her opponent, and I think that we want to start with the first excerpt of that. Can we see that?
He is paying good lip service to the principles of impartiality and open-mindedness. But throughout this campaign, he has taken issues on cases pending before the Wisconsin Supreme Court, including cases like one involving an 1849 abortion law that, if it were in effect, would criminalize pretty much all abortions in Wisconsin. He has openly said, when he's in front of audiences of his political allies, that there is nothing wrong with that law and it should be enforced.
So this is why, of course, Susan Crawford is the important candidate to vote for. And we have, I wondered if you wanted to talk a little bit about what Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin are doing, and our FFRF Action Fund's doing a little bit of partnership with you, phone banking and that kind of thing. What are you doing to get out the vote? Yeah,
so Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin has proudly endorsed Susan Crawford in this election, as you noted, and our organizing team and volunteers are getting out the vote, telling people what's at stake. They're knocking doors, they're phone banking, there's always social media, there's mailing. So it's just a really robust effort to not just get out the vote, but to engage with people about what is the role of the Supreme Court and what kind of impact does your vote have and your decision have on things like reproductive freedom. As you mentioned, we've got these 2 cases pending, and we talked about those restrictions. If Planned Parenthood's lawsuit establishing a constitutional right to access abortion is successful, there will very likely be future cases about to what extent the government can get involved in the provision of that care. So again, these two cases are really the very beginning of an ongoing legal challenges to these restrictions.
And so whoever wins this race is the swing vote, and it's a 10-year term. So terribly, terribly crucial.
Absolutely.
And of course, look at the national attention this Wisconsin Supreme Court race on April 1st is getting, and the money that Elon Musk has spent is at least $6 million. He's getting people knocking on votes. Associated Press said this is really a referendum on Elon Musk and his interference with the government in a way. So it's been quite extraordinary, hasn't it?
Yes, that's right. I think I read an article yesterday about the amount of money being poured into the Schimmel campaign from that individual, from Mr. Musk. And in fact, there was an article about people knocking doors, not really understanding on his behalf, not really understanding what our Supreme Court does, what's at stake, and where the candidate stands. The Wisconsin Supreme Court will decide cases about voting rights, about democracy, gerrymandering. So these are just really crucial decisions about our state. And so it's just really important that people know that that's what the role of these justices are. And that's sometimes challenging for people to understand because we are all bombarded with a lot of information. There's a lot of ads, and sometimes there's an emphasis on the sentencing practice of somebody as a trial court judge. And that's just really, I think,
misleading.
It is.
Well,
it's misleading about the role.
That ad, which is through a PAC that Elon Musk has poured his money into, doesn't acknowledge that we have sentencing requirements in the state statutes to take the most lenient sentence. And so they're pounding Susan Crawford in a very, I think, unethical manner.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, these are cases where judges at the circuit court level have a lot of discretion, and you're right. Our state laws require judges to use the least amount of incarceration necessary to advance the objectives of the sentencing. And so that's all really difficult to put into a 30-second ad.
Right.
But what I think we can do is provide some civic engagement and education about, again, what does the Supreme Court do, and what is its primary function? And so, right, we know that the legislature passes laws, but somebody has to interpret what those laws mean, and somebody has to decide if those laws violate any of our protected constitutional rights. Somebody has to decide what our state constitution means. And so, for example, Article 1, Section 1 of the Wisconsin Constitution says that all people born are equally entitled to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I'm paraphrasing. But, these justices have to breathe life into those words. What do those words mean? They can't just be sort of on a piece of paper without any meaning behind them when we're talking about, that in relation to the laws that the legislature might pass. So there, again, that state court is a check on the legislature and a check sometimes on the executive office. And I think maybe now more than ever, we need a judiciary that will uphold those values.
So we have another clip from the debate about Judge Crawford's connection to Planned Parenthood.
As a lawyer in Wisconsin, I've represented organizations like Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin and their doctors back when Roe versus Wade was in case, making sure that women could make their own choices about their bodies and their health care. As a woman, as somebody who has gone through pregnancy, labor, and birth, I want to make my own health care decisions, and I trust women to do that.
Any comments on that? What else have you learned about Susan Crawford?
Yeah, so during her time as at a law firm here in Madison as a partner, she did work on a case on behalf of Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin. That case challenged legislation that sought to, again, make it more difficult for people to get abortion care. That was a law relating to admitting privileges, requiring essentially providers to have the privilege of being able to work in hospitals within a certain radius. Again, that law wasn't needed to advance health outcomes. It wasn't done for people's safety. It was passed for the sole purpose of making it harder.
Difficult.
And,
A trap law.
It was a trap law.
Yeah.
And she challenged that constitutionality of that law on behalf of Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin, and she won.
Good for her.
She won in the district court here in Madison, the Western District of Wisconsin, and that decision was then appealed. And Brad Schimmel was part of that decision to appeal that case, or part of the litigation involving the appeal. And the Seventh Circuit affirmed that decision. So, and then as Attorney General, Brad Schimmel tried to get the U.S. Supreme Court to take that case. It declined to do so. And so that law was stricken as unconstitutional from our books.
And he has a strong anti-abortion record. There's no question.
There's no question about it. In his time as Attorney General, he decided to expend resources prioritizing, challenging, or continuing to try and defend this unconstitutional law, and it ended up costing the state of Wisconsin money because they had to pay damages or attorney fees, etc. I was not at Planned Parenthood during that time, but yeah, I think that really speaks volumes of where his values are.
And the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is the parent group of FFRF Action Fund, also had to sue over something he did that was entangling state and church, which was to create chaplains for the Department of Justice, which is totally unnecessary. They're not like prisoners who don't have accommodations for their religion. And when he left office, then that case was settled and they dropped it. But we also have strong state church problems with Brad Schimmel. And we're going to put up some information on the screen that shows some of the differences between the two of them and why they've earned the support, why they haven't earned the support or have earned the support. And you can see that there. And this year's election to the Wisconsin Supreme Court, as we mentioned, is being underwritten by Elon Musk, and he has I guess, pumped directly or indirectly $13 million into the race that we know about. And this is just extraordinary. And this is the most expensive state Supreme Court race in history now. And the one 2 years ago with Janet Protasiewicz broke records 2 years ago. And of course, she was also the swing vote on abortion rights. So here we are again 2 years later. And here's what Susan Crawford said about Musk during the debate.
Let's talk about Elon Musk. Talk about somebody who's been dangerous, who's firing air traffic controllers, who's firing the people who are trying to figure out the avian flu issue that is causing the cost of eggs to increase so rapidly in Wisconsin. He has now spent over $10 million on my opponent's race. He has basically taken over Brad Schimmel's campaign. He's got paid canvassers who are knocking on doors, handing out flyers that say, support the Trump agenda, put Brad Schimmel on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. This is unprecedented to see this kind of spending on a race, and it is no coincidence that Elon Musk started spending that money within days of Tesla filing a lawsuit in Wisconsin.
Two quick questions.
He's trying to buy access and influence by buying himself a justice on the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Two quick questions on the...
So why is Wisconsin a must-win state for Elon Musk?
Well, I think, Judge Crawford explained that nicely in this clip. It's about maintaining power and having some influence. I just read an article this morning where, Elon Musk is quoted as saying they need Brad Schimmel to win this race because they are scared of redistricting in Wisconsin. Wisconsin's congressional maps have been graded F in terms of their partisan fairness, and so I think there's a real desire on the part of Mr. Musk to try to maintain that control over the maps in Wisconsin. And certainly, if a lawsuit about those maps were to make its way to the Wisconsin Supreme or be filed, it would make its way to the Wisconsin Supreme Court. So certainly congressional maps are something that our state Supreme Court may weigh in on at some point.
So I should say that our Action Fund has also endorsed several candidates in Wisconsin up and down the ballot for the April 1st election. That includes Jill Underly for Wisconsin State Superintendent, she's the incumbent, and Carl Bryan for the Kenosha Unified School District. And Michelle, why are the races up and down the ballot just as impactful?
I'm so glad you've done that. You've endorsed people up and down the ballot, and you're talking about that because these local elections have really big impacts on everybody's day-to-day lives as well. So a lot of education policy is handled at the very local level. Issues around public health are addressed sometimes in counties and city spaces. So it's just really important for people to know who's on their ballot, what does that position do, and how those policies that they have responsibility for impact their day-to-day lives.
So we are having, a phone bank today with Planned Parenthood. I've been doing phone banking the last 2 Wednesdays, and we're going to start at 5 o'clock Central Time for training. Hit the phones by 6. If you want to sign up, I would urge you to do that. Go to Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin website. There's a QR code too. But if you go to the website, you can click on the events calendar. We're also posting the link in the description of the show. And just a way to reach informed voters and make sure they know where to vote and how to vote. And of course, we want our viewers to know where and how to vote and not to forget to vote. There's early voting going on right now through March 30th, most places, not all places. And if you go to, I think we have on the screen where you can get information, what is it, wisvote.gov?
It's myvote.wi.gov, I believe.
Myvote. Yes, and we're going to put that on the screen in a minute there, myvote.wi.gov. Tells you everything you need to know. Early voting, what to do with your ballot if you need to get it to Dropbox now because it's too late to mail, where to vote on April 1st, everything you need to know. And on Tuesday, April 1st, polls open at 7 a.m., continue to 8 p.m., and on everyone's ballot will be the state Supreme Court justice ticket, the state superintendent, Underly, and a referendum regarding voter ID laws. Of course, we suggest voting no on that one. So for more information on how to register, where to vote, the local races that will be on your specific ballot, again, go to myvote.wi.gov. If you enter your name and address, it'll give you everything you need to know. And if you'd like more information about the candidates or the state resolution, WisconsinDecides.com has some great resources where you can read up on that resolution. The wording can be quite confusing. And I think do we have a final clip from the debate to show?
2 quick rapid-fire questions. The first, 1 or 2 words that come to your mind. Judge Schimmel, what U.S. Supreme Court justice, current or former, would you like to have dinner with?
Antonin Scalia, as I've heard, is a fascinating dinner companion.
Judge Crawford.
Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
So what a difference, huh?
Absolutely. These are 2 very different candidates. And I just really hope people take some time to learn about each of them, where they stand on issues that are going to impact this state, not just now, but really, frankly, for generations to come.
Yeah, so you can make comments in the chat if you have any questions or comments. And then we just, of course, want everyone to know that FFRF Action Fund is strongly endorsing Susan Crawford. If you haven't voted yet, please make your voting plans and be sure to support Susan Crawford for the state Supreme Court. Don't support Elon Musk and his candidate. Support Judge Susan Crawford and also Jill Underly for superintendent. And with that, we're going to see if we have any questions or comments. And I've got some here. And, so somebody asked, what can I do to help get out the vote?
That's a great question. So I think what people can do to help get out the vote is go to Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin's website, check out the events page. There's opportunities to volunteer to canvass, there's phone banking, but also you can talk to the people you have ties with, your family, your friends, your neighbors, these are just really important conversations to have. So those are all things people can do to get out the vote.
Yeah, get their friends and colleagues and their Generation Z young people to the polls. Somebody asked, what would I do to convince unmotivated friends to go and vote?
So I think that, what you can do to convince perhaps somebody who's unmotivated is to just find something that is important to them. Maybe it's not abortion. Maybe that's not a top issue or priority for somebody, but maybe workers' rights are important. Maybe voting rights are important. So just find that thing that is really impactful for that person's life and open that conversation there, and then connect that to, well, how would the outcome of this election impact that thing that's important to them?
So someone else asks, if things go well in Wisconsin, could we see access to abortion care expand?
Absolutely. I think that's a real possibility. It's certainly part of Planned Parenthood Advocates of Wisconsin's agenda is to continue to work to protect and expand access. So again, this constitutional question is the beginning of a longer term plan to ensure that access is expanded beyond the 3 counties where it's currently available.
So, Michelle, somebody's asking you, why do so many people nationally care about this Wisconsin race?
So I think there are some people who care a lot about this Wisconsin race because of the important decisions that our state Supreme Court will make, particularly around voting rights and maps and democracy. Also because Wisconsin is a swing state, so what happens in this election may be sort of a little bit of a clue as to what might happen in the midterms. So people are really watching this.
Well, and it's just extraordinary to me the degree of interference by Elon Musk, and why does he care so much? And I guess we'd have to ask him. Besides abortion access, and you've kind of covered this, but what else could improve with Susan Crawford on the state Supreme Court?
So I think that we'll still continue to see cases that deal with labor rights. So Act 10, for example, education policy, laws related to transgender healthcare. The list just sort of goes on, but I think those are some of the main things that we'll be seeing.
But I have to say, it's just so crucial that people get out and vote to protect abortion rights. We do not want to go back to that period where abortion was not legal and not available. It's such a hardship.
Absolutely. I mean, we already know that banning abortion doesn't stop it. It just makes it harder for people to get and can sometimes make it less safe. Things have improved because of access to mifepristone and misoprostol, but nonetheless, people shouldn't have to travel out of state to get health care.
No,
and if we don't have the right to bodily autonomy, I don't know how we have a democracy.
Yeah, or control of any other aspect of our lives. So again, message takeaway, vote for Susan Crawford for Wisconsin State Supreme Court. We also ask you to vote for Superintendent Jill Underly, and you can find out more. What is the Planned Parenthood Advocacy website?
www.ppawi.org.
Yes, or Google Planned Parenthood Advocacy of Wisconsin. You can also go to the FFRF Action Fund website for any information that you need, and we have our endorsement information up. And remember to vote. Vote April 1st if you haven't already voted, and we are depending on that vote. And again, there's some information on the spring election, and we really appreciate your interest in protecting abortion rights and other democratic rights in the state of Wisconsin by supporting Susan Crawford. And thank you for watching. That's our show for today.